All right, everybody, it is 2 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. This is a webinar as part of our series related to the Landscape Pros Playbook, published in partnership with Landscape Management Magazine. Today, we are talking funding growth, how John Deere financing powers operations. My name is Emily Lindley. I am a member of the Grow Group team, and with me today is Marty Grunder, founder and CEO of Grunder Landscaping Company and the Grow Group. And then I also have Luke Gribble and Cameron Stoll from the John Deere financing team. They're going to take you through everything you need to know here today. If you need anything as we go along, feel free to put it through the chat, or if you have questions for them as we go along, you can send it to us through the Q&A. Marty, I will let you take it from here.
Emily, thank you very much. Marty Grunder, Grunder Landscaping Company and the Grow Group. Really excited to have you with us today. I've got my two pals from John Deere, Luke Gribble and Cameron Stahl, that have joined us today to give you a little bit of background on how we got to today. So, first of all, in the last 3 years, Grunder Landscaping Company has grown tremendously. Many of you that have joined us today maybe have been following along with our growth. I don't say that to tell you, like I'm bragging. I just know that we chronicle our growth as a way of helping you grow your own business, the trials and tribulations that we go through. One of the things that we were faced with was a need for equipment to grow. And how do we buy all this equipment? Do we buy it? Do we pay cash for what we can? Well, that's tough because you still need cash when you're growing a business. Do we finance it all? That becomes difficult. You're tying up buying power, and your balance sheet takes on a different persona, if you will. Do you lease it? What do you do? So we had seen companies that had done some progressive things, and we got with Luke and Cameron and his team, and we were able to come up with some pretty innovative ways. Some of you that have joined us today may already be tapping into what we're doing. So whether you're interested in growing your business and you need a John Deere, maybe you need a few mini excavators, maybe you're looking at growing snow and you need some loaders and mini skid steers. Maybe you're just looking at adding a couple more machines to your growing landscaping business, whatever it is. The financing side, which is not something a lot of us go to school for. I went to school for business. It wasn't a concentration on finance. I've learned a lot from working with Luke and Cameron. And you have to understand that John Deere is one of the 10 most iconic brands of anything in the country. Look it up if you don't believe me. And with that comes a lot of resources, a lot of experience, a lot of industry knowledge. So, John Deere, we were fortunate enough to have them support us in our Landscape Pros playbook. And as part of that playbook, we did webinars with 5 of the headline sponsors, John Deere being one of them. So I'm excited. Luke and Cameron, welcome. And I'm excited because the three of us already presented the gist of this at Grow back in Dallas last month. And so we're kind of warmed up with this, and it's a great topic. I promise all that have joined here, it's not a boring topic. We're going to show you how to make some money and how to save some money here. So Luke and Cameron, take it away.
Yeah, really appreciate that, Marty. No, we're excited. Yeah, we thought that the Grow event went really well just a couple weeks ago, and you're right. I think this topic is one that can maybe sound you're not sure what to expect at first, right? Like, is it a boring numbers crunching kind of class? And we don't anticipate that being the case at all. I think there's a lot of power in
Well,
talking
now,
about.
Luke, if it was just me and you, it might be boring, but we got Cameron with us.
He
Oh, that's a
brings
heavy weight to bear.
he brings it to another level. He does. So no, we're both excited to jump into things here. And even if you attended Grow by chance and saw this, you might hear a little bit, but I think we've got some different perspectives and things to build on. And for those of you that didn't attend Grow, I think this is a good opportunity to really get a look into what we talked about specific to Grunder Landscaping, specific to other tools that John Deere Finance has for whatever piece of equipment or whatever way you want to think it. And you might just learn some general topics. We want to keep it there too. We think that at John Deere we've got a lot of great specific tools that we can offer that are unique in the industry. But overall, we talk about a lot of things that you can find out from other places you might think about borrowing or getting money from, or other equipment manufacturers. So we like to kind of keep a good mix of it in here. So with that, we can probably go ahead and kick it off
Yeah,
and
let's
get the lay
get
of the
started.
land here. So
Yep.
So again, we're just going to talk through. There's the ways that you can approach equipment. Marty, you hit on it at first. We're going to kind of go through each of those, and specifically how Grunder Landscaping has kind of approached each of those, and even changed some perspective over time. That's going to be, I think, the bulk of the conversation that we end up talking about here, to provide everybody some real world insights on how this is being practiced in a business like Grunder's. And then make sure that you walk away with understanding what can you do in your business to kind of open up the books, go talk to your team, go talk to your accountant or whoever you trust for your financials, and see if you're doing the right thing, or ask questions of your team to see if maybe you need to explore another route. We're going to really try and give you some good takeaways. And then the equipment financing and the equipment procurement is really important, of course, but we know there's more to the story. Sometimes the shiniest deal or the best deal, there might be more to it, or you want to ask more questions. So whether it's tech, whether it's product and dealer support, Marty, I know you provided a lot of good examples of, hey, this can be a good piece of the business, but make sure you've got these to think about that overall growth strategy as well. And then, of course, we are open for questions throughout and at the end of the presentation. So please put them in the chat, and we're happy to answer those along the way or at the very end, whatever works best.
Fantastic, Luke.
So the one thing that we do like to mention, so that we don't overpromise and underdeliver here, is that none of us, myself, Marty, or Cameron, are true financial advisors. So we are going to be able to provide you with what we know, what we offer. Marty's going to talk about what works well with Grunder Landscaping and how they approach things. But at the end of the day, none of us can come in and tell you this is exactly how you should do it. That this strategy will save you this much on taxes, or this will help your balance sheet look this much better. We very much encourage you to go talk with your financial advisor, go talk with an attorney, go talk with your CPA, because again, while we think there are some great tangible things you can take away from this webinar here today, your business is probably going to be set up a little different than Grunder's. It's going to be set up different than the business down the road from you. So just make sure you've got your team in line, that you've got somebody who can give you insights into crunching your numbers. We're here to provide some good insights today, but as always, go back and talk with the folks that you trust to manage your finances for your business.
And Luke and Cameron, I'll add here, I cannot tell you how many times in my 42-year business career I've read an article in the Wall Street Journal. I went to a seminar. I saw a webinar. I had a conversation with the owner of another company, and they talked about some creative thing they were doing in their business, not all accounting. And then instead of just jumping in and doing that, okay, you go and you ask another expert like your accountant, hey, what do you think of this? 10 years ago, what we're going to present here, one of the solutions we have, I never would have even considered it. I'm glad that we considered it. And you do need a good accountant, but the accountants don't know everything either. Like they're, just like we don't know everything. And I think when you find the balance there between seeking new ideas, but then running them through the filter with the advisors that you have at your disposal, that's a good place to be.
Yeah, and I think that's one of my favorite things about working with this industry, Marty, and I think Luke could probably echo that as well, is no two businesses are the same, right? Everybody's
Amen.
got a little bit different geography, a little bit different equipment mix, a little bit different services mix. So really what we want to do is just put more tools in your toolbox and let you kind of ask questions and see what might work for you, and then take those back, use your business expertise and what you know about your area and your operation, and see if we can help you.
Amen.
No, that's great stuff here. And again, I always like to mention that, but doesn't mean that we can't provide you with some good tools and insights today. So Cameron and I have used this slide as a good way to just set up when you're thinking about procuring equipment. And again, this is more catered towards financing, and we're going to still talk about cash as well. But this is something we like to point out is why financing might not be a bad thing. Sometimes it gets a bad connotation, but there are some good advantages that help you understand your cash flow better, that help you make business decisions better, when to purchase, when to offload equipment, what your strategies are. So yes, purchasing equipment is something you're doing right now, but when you approach it from a financial perspective, it will allow you to plan your business better. And I think that's what you're going to hit on a lot too, Marty, that it's not just, all right, we bought a bunch of equipment, here we go. We'll worry about it when it breaks down after so many years or so many hours. there's some really good ways that when you have that equipment and think about it up front, you can plan for your business better, keep things more consistent. And these are just a few things that come to mind here, between total cost of ownership, understanding the life of the equipment, how do you manage that resale value and exit strategy. And then again, we're not going to get into specifics on taxes, but this is one of those, again, talk to that financial person that's on your team, or a trusted advisor, to understand what this could do for you, because equipment purchasing definitely has some implications here. So, Cameron, I don't know if you want to talk through anything on this that you feel like we're really going to hit on, or adds value, before we kind of get into some of the different options here.
Yeah, I think the big thing to take away here, and you're going to hear it throughout the discussion here this afternoon, is that, you may be asking, what's John Deere doing in the financing business, right? They're not a bank, they're an equipment manufacturer. You're absolutely correct. So we see the value in this because not only are we an equipment manufacturer, we're a solutions company, right? Is that we are here to help design solutions for operators to help run their businesses. And financing is a huge piece of that. We as an organization see huge value in having our own finance company. So we're not partnered with any bank. This isn't like a branded credit card that is actually run by some other financial institution. This is a completely in-house deal that we wake up every day thinking about how do we provide solutions for people in the industries that we serve to help better run their business. So when you think about that and you look at the bullets that are laid out here, total cost of ownership, equipment lifespan, resale value, those are all things that you're thinking about when you're procuring equipment, right? And we're going to talk about equipment procurement today, but those are just different things that financing helps when it comes into that discussion. So it kind of helps bring it all together as to, why do we think it's valuable to be in this business?
And as I'm looking at this slide, Luke and Cameron, I'm thinking back. It's my 42nd year in business, and I'm old, but I have a pretty good memory. And I remember graduating from the University of Dayton. I had one skid steer. I thought I wanted to buy another one. At that time, I'm not going to lie to any of you, I was kind of infatuated with equipment. I wasn't as focused on making money as I should have been. But, total cost of ownership, when I was 23 years old getting this business off the ground, I never thought about that. I never thought about the equipment lifespan. I never thought about resale value or exit strategy. I just wanted to get another machine. I thought I could, yeah, of course, I thought I could make money, but these are all things, folks, that maybe you haven't thought about this, but this is a logical progression of the business person. If you're a smaller operator, new, somewhat new, maybe you've been renting a mini skid steer and a mini excavator, and you're thinking maybe you can justify owning one. These are some of the filters that you run that through before you even go to your accountant. I mean, you've got to learn how to do some of this stuff yourself so you understand it as a business owner.
No, that's a great point, Marty. And yeah, I think that's something I like to echo as well. Is honestly, if you're able to start thinking about that total cost of ownership and your exit strategy, that could be a hack, so to speak, in of itself. Because I know, coming from
100%.
a construction industry previously, before my focus on the landscape industry, I can tell you a lot of very large contractors are in heavy construction and mining. They know their numbers very well when it comes to equipment, and it's not just wow, we'd love to have more of it. It has a
Right.
purpose, and they have a plan, and they understand. I know you're big on your numbers. As you start to become more familiar with this, it's another piece of the puzzle here. So
Yes. Agreed.
I think with that, what we really like to shift to here is, these are the four categories we like to bucket, so to speak, in how you can go about procuring equipment. And I think, Cameron, you kind of provide the overview of what the four are, and then we've really turned it over to Marty to start providing insights. Is how does Grunder kind of bucket these, or how did they used to do it, or do it now? So this is really, I think, the bulk of where our conversation goes here today, about these four, and how they're approached in this business.
Yeah, and we kind of teased the discussion a little bit up front, but the way I kind of walk through this is left to right. So you have cash and installment loans, right? So those are going to be two different procurement options that at the end or the start, if it's cash, those are going to lead to your ownership of the equipment. So the installment loan, we're going to set up and say, okay, you're going to do this at X interest rate for 36 months. At the end of that 36 months, you own that equipment. So back to the previous slide, then we're thinking about resale value. We're thinking about exit strategy. You're going to own that piece of equipment at the end of 36 months. You're going to then make those decisions about what are you going to do with that piece at that point. Leasing and renting, those are two options where at the end of those terms, there isn't an ownership, a defined ownership. So leasing, we're going to say at the start of it, we're going to say there's a purchase option at the end of this lease term. If you want to continue with this piece of equipment, we can execute that purchase option. If you want to be done with this piece of equipment, you want to get into something new, it's no obligation to you. That's the way that our lease functions. So at the end of that, if you say, nope, I don't want to execute that purchase option, I've made all my payments that I've made on this lease, I want to get into something else, we get you right into a new piece of equipment. Renting is going to be where you have the least amount of autonomy or ownership in the process as a business owner here. You're kind of subject to inventory that's available from your local rental house, seasonal rates that may be in place on how they want to charge that. And then ultimately, that's just an expense to you as a rental expense. There's no equity, there's no purchase option. It's just money out the door to use that piece of equipment. So those are the way that we kind of look about the four main procurement options that we see in this industry, and kind of some of the pros and cons to them. So Marty really hit on those earlier. Cash, it's a big outlay of cash. Growth is expensive. Cash is important for growth. So keeping that cash on hand for other expenses is oftentimes what people tend to lean towards. Installment loans, you're going to have a monthly payment or an annual payment or however you want to structure that, but it's a little bit more of a defined expense. So you're able to extend that cash that you have on hand to use for other growth opportunities.
So, and I can go through each one. On the cash side, when we were at 5 million and we weren't growing, there was quite a few pieces of equipment that we paid cash for. But we're talking about buying one machine here and there. The needs that we have to grow, we can't do that anymore. To Cameron's point, there's other needs for that cash. And so you've probably heard the expression cash is king. It really is. So for us to pay cash for these machines, we're not able to do that and fund the growth that we need to fund. So then you start to look at installment loans and those go on your balance sheet and you are going to need some leverage if you decide to grow your business. Um, let's say you had a couple $100,000 in cash. You're looking at buying a mini skid steer at $71,000. You're thinking maybe I should just pay it. You'd be better off borrowing the money and making payments. And if you're in a good spot and you get through your spring rush of cash, maybe you pay it off or whatever. But there's reasons for all of these. The things that we ended up moving into was leasing on a lot of these machines. And the reason we went to leasing with John Deere, with what they showed us, was because we didn't like the renting. We were renting a tremendous amount of pieces of equipment, skid steers and loaders, to satisfy our growing snow removal operation in the winter. And yes, the rent is 100%, you can write it off and everything. And there was that. And you didn't have to worry about the maintenance and other things, but it was very expensive. And John Deere showed us through some special programs that they have where it made sense for us to lease the machines. Luke and Cameron, I think I mentioned this in Dallas. It looks like we're going to get between 50 and 80 hours on the machines that we leased for the winter season. So they're going to be low hours when the leases are up. There is a residual value. We're going to have an option to purchase the equipment. We're taking care of the equipment. It's getting washed and everything else. And I think we're going to be in a good spot where we can possibly buy it at the end of that. We've enabled ourselves to get caught up a little bit better because the leasing is less expensive than the installment loans, and it keeps some space open up on our balance sheet to borrow money for other things. And it's worked out being really good. Now, one of the things that I think is a good idea with a lot of contractors that we're working on at the Grow Group, I will never tell them to pay cash for a machine, even if they have a ton of cash. You just never know what's going to happen. You may take on a $500,000 commercial job and it gets hung up in payment, and now you're strapped for cash, and your cash is sitting in a yellow John Deere loader that's in your parking lot that I've seen cases where people have had to go back to the bank and say, hey, I want to give you my loader. I need to borrow money on it because I haven't got paid for a job. And this is real world struggles that happens with businesses. So that looking at this from all angles and really truly trying to figure out, and here's the cool thing about this stuff, folks. You can sit down with John Deere, you can sit down with your accountant. A lot of this is a math equation. Now, at a certain point in all of this stuff, there's a guess that you have to make. Like you have to present the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, and what's most likely to happen. But there's a lot of math you can do here. And we were very pleasantly surprised on how attractive the leasing side came. Now, the other thing that goes into when you're doing the leasing, and it's this way at renting, but not really much merit in talking about that today, I would assume you're only renting from a rental yard that you can count on. When you're leasing from John Deere, their dealership and their network of dealers and all their expertise in terms of coming along with keeping you on the road is fantastic. We work with Koenig Equipment. They have a location that's about 20 minutes from either of our branches, one in Dayton, one in Cincinnati. Luke and Cameron, I think I told you this. At one point, we had to call Brittany kind of in the middle of the night. We said we got a bent rim on one skid steer, and we got a wheel come off another one. And she brought us, in one case, a demo machine, and in the other case, she brought us a wheel. That's the kind of partnership that you need. You're not dealing with, you bought the machine from someone and now there's a third party organization that you're financing from. It's an arm's length transaction. You can't call, like Western Finance is a company that probably has cold called you to have to finance equipment. You're not going to get any help from them fixing the equipment. So the leasing thing made sense. So those are kind of the angles. And Cameron or Luke, if I've missed something, please help draw it out of me. But those are the biggest part of what this was, and we're pretty excited about this. There's been some benefits. Many of the loaders sit in our Cincinnati warehouse for the summer, but in the spring, one of the ways we've been able to save money and labor is having mulch direct shipped to parking lots, and now we have extra loaders to use those. You have to check the way your lease is written. I'm not even sure if John Deere permits this, but possibly Luke or Cameron, you'd have to clarify. I think there may be, if the lease is written right. Is there an opportunity for them to sublease or no?
It's going to depend on the type of lease that it is.
Yeah.
But to your point, make sure that you call that part out
Yeah, and
in the way the lease is written. But
you may not be able to do that. We're not doing that. I'm just saying, like, this is this is like the maturation of a business person where you're growing your business and you're using other people's money to help fund this. Obviously, John Deere is making money off this, or they wouldn't do it. Okay, but they're very, very smart people, and they have their own financing arm, and they understand the time value of money. And these are just different ways you can go through this and improve your organization as a result.
Yeah, and I think you were hitting on this a little bit, Marty, too. But yeah, we've got this slide that I think just reiterates the here's what it means
Right.
from that paying up front with cash, some examples versus some of those different options. And I always like to mention too, Cameron kind of hit on it, right? Like John Deere is we're in the business to manufacture machines and provide really solid solutions to customers. One of the
Amen.
solutions though is financing. We want to make it easy and attractive for folks to get into those machines. And and installments and leasing, there's plenty of businesses that do that. That's not a unique part of what John Deere Finance offers, right? You can go to a number of different outlets to do that. A number of different manufacturers offer it, but because we truly know our equipment and feel like that's all we focus on and know what it can look like when it comes back, not only does that give us more confidence in being able to provide competitive rates, but be able to provide these kind of tools and add-ons there that benefit you all as the business too. At the end of the day, we feel like because we know equipment the best, that allows us to give better residual values. That allows us to be more competitive in our finance offerings. We still have a lot of financing at 0% interest rate right now. So your point, you can get a machine at someone else's using someone else's money. That's a real
Right.
deal. That's
Right.
still very active today. That's a great way to fund something that's making you money for your business.
Well, and just, I mean, let's just look at this. And this is how I'm thinking I'm Marty Grunder when I was at $2 million a year in sales. So I had a good year. I got 350,000 left at the end of the year. And now this drives me crazy. Some of these owners, Luke and Cameron, that got to go take advantage of a 179 deduction in the last 2 weeks of the year because their accountants told them not paying tax. Folks, if you're paying taxes, it means you made money. Just going to buy a piece of equipment that you really don't need to avoid paying tax, there's not a whole lot of logic in that, but I digress. So I got 350,000 left. Let's just say I did. I had a really good couple years and I've saved my money. I could go pay 70,000 for the machine, I could borrow the money for $1,300 a month, or I can try to keep that 350 around to put a down payment and build a new facility, or to buy another company to make my company better, to get some growth, and I can lease it for 800. So I just freed up $512.50. Well, that's not going to in a month, that's $6,000 a year, okay? About. But all these little adjustments, folks, that can be used for something else, that might pay for a piece of software to bring into the company. That might pay, I mean, this is somewhat silly, but that might pay for a couple food trucks three times a year for the team to motivate them. It's about what am I using this money for, and how can I better position and grow the business? What we were in 3 years ago before we hooked up with John Deere, and by the way, that skid that is in that picture with that 10-foot Boss pusher box, that is an incredible setup, folks. You would not believe what that little machine can do. That is our bread and butter machine. I think we have 20 of those machines right there, and they're fabulous. So, just as a side note, um, the renting thing, Luke and Cameron, that was what was killing us. And you look at the payment that you have on the screen versus leasing, it's almost 3 to 1. So, and we end up with a machine at the end of the lease that there's most likely going to be some residual on that we can sell. Is it really didn't, in the gist of it, folks, this was a no-brainer for us. The numbers were so glaringly obvious as to what made sense, that we went this route. So that's just a little bit more insight on into what we did and how we did it.
No, and you kind of had just a little piece in there, Marty, that we didn't touch on when we were talking about purchase options, but you'd mentioned before, low hour machines, you take good care of your machines. If you execute that purchase option, there's nothing that says that you can't then, like, you can't go and sell that machine. And then if you're able to
Right.
get more than what that was, then
Exactly.
yep. So that goes
Or
kind
we
of back.
might decide to just keep those in the fleet, and because the hours are so low, we're not leasing them anymore. Maybe we buy them.
Yep.
This is just a step, folks, of freeing up cash. Um, and this is something I've been telling some non-finance people to do. Take this example that we have on the board here, put it in the chat GPT and see what it tells you. You'll be amazed at the financial education you can get from studying this stuff. At the end, you still may decide to pay cash for it, or you may want to do an installment loan. But man, I can't tell you how many things I've learned in business in my 42 years when I've been presented with maybe not the most common way of doing things and seeing how it might benefit my business. And that's what this has been a case of for sure.
Yeah. I think just the last point, what I've always found really neat about we've been talking about this class for Grow and for this webinar for quite a while now, maybe
Few
a
years,
year,
I
8 months
think.
or
3
something.
years, yeah.
The more that I started talking with you and Seth and Emily about this too, is that I got the feeling that for a while, like you were dead set on renting, right? Like that was your
Yeah.
strategy
Well,
and
because
something.
I didn't want to tie my balance sheet up, and I sure didn't want to
Yep.
go spending cash. And the other thing with it is, and this may sound bad, I don't think it'll sound terrible. It was a confidence thing. Like, is this going to work? And if I got to pull my head back in my shell, like, what's my liability? Well, we got beyond that. We know it's working. So then we saw it was a viable business. It was making money at renting. Now look at what it's doing with leasing.
Yeah. No, and I think that's the neat thing. At some point, I think you said Seth or others, you all came together as that leadership team and said, we just discovered this option. Maybe we
Yeah.
should reconsider it. And I think that's the powerful thing too. You do a lot of that at Grow, and a lot of the customers that attend that, hey, we were doing something and we thought we were set on it, but then we found there's some other things, and we put our heads together and thought, I think this makes sense for the business. And now you're finding different ways to use the loaders throughout the year. It's that great example of, again, why we're just trying to bring some awareness to other options out there. The
Well,
traditional ones they're out there. A lot of companies offer them, like I said, but there's some unique things about different ways of going about equipment. So that was what I
and
always thought was really neat in all of this. You all were good at too of saying, "Yep, I don't think this works anymore. Let's try something else." So
well, this has been a terrific program.
yeah.
So
No, that's the fun part there. So I guess as we kind of transition here, we've talked about how you and Grunder Landscaping have approached this. We wanted to talk through really ways for the folks on the call and folks that we talk to at Grow in person. What else is there? What can you do to try and see is exploring another procurement route right for my company? Can you give me any tips on where to start looking? Who do I need to talk to? Are there any other things that Grunder considered when they went to leasing as part of the package? So I think this is really the part where we can say, here's some ideas about how you might be able to take this back and implement in your business, or at least start opening up and looking for different ways.
And I will say, we looked at other things like I think we have 90 mowers in the fleet now, 70 or 90. I know that's a big difference. I can't remember the number. I need to go count them. But um, we looked at leasing the mowers versus buying them. It just didn't make sense for us to lease the mowers. So this isn't something that always is going to work for what you're doing. But again, smart business people, like the questions Luke has up here, and he's saying, like, there's not one way that works for everyone. This is just something to disrupt equilibrium, to make you think, to see if there's a better way to do it. What are the numbers you're telling right now? If cash flow is a problem, the leasing is going to free up more cash. The technology side of this, having a new machine, it's fine. It's very difficult to find operators in the winter. We have been able to find them. We've been able to find equipment operators that weren't running dozers and other things because there's snow on the ground. And you tell them you're going to give them a brand new John Deere mini skid steer, John Deere skid steer, or a John Deere loader, or like the larger loader that you see over Seth's shoulder. And it's brand new and it smells new and the heater works and the windshield wipers work and it's warm. Okay. This is pretty easy stuff for people to run. Even that small little skid steer that I showed you with the Boss pusher blocks on the front, that is a very nice machine in front. It's comfortable, it's extremely smooth. So that can play a role in it. And again, I said it before, that's Brittany that you see in the picture. I mean, Brittany coming out in the middle of the night with a tire and a rim. Again, we're not going to get that even from our rental yard, I don't believe. I think we would have had to wait till they opened. And this was on like, I think this was a Saturday night to boot. So there's just a lot that comes through this. And at the end of the day, if you're not able to perform for your clients, you got a problem. So you can't underestimate the value of having a machine that you know is going to start and do what it's supposed to do.
No, I
Yeah,
totally agree. There's value in all of this. And again, even your example of, we realize this didn't work for mowers. It doesn't have to be all right, we're all
Right.
in on this, all in on that. I think in Dallas, we even talked with some of your trucks and stuff, you customize them a lot. And that is maybe more of a cash route because it's going to be harder to offload those. So I
It
think
just
that's one
made
of the
no,
things
it
too.
doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense for us to lease our bread and butter trucks because they're too customized and the way they work and how long we keep them. So hopefully I'm gaining credibility from you in terms of, I don't think leasing is going to make sense for everything, but certainly in this one here, and it might, I mean, I have some clients in the Grow Group that are leasing their mowers and they love it. We haven't gotten to that point yet. That's probably something Cameron, you and Luke and I ought to dig into and just take another look at that. So again, we're just trying to help you grow your business, and everybody's going to need a loader. Make it a John Deere loader if you do it. But we're trying to show you some ways that you can make more money here.
Yeah, I was going to say again, it's not that we get more for leasing versus installment or whatever, but
Right.
I think one of the things time and time again that Cameron and I get a lot of questions on at shows and even at Grow is, well, I heard, yeah, leasing. I don't know what I'm going to have at the end of it, or they don't understand the residual piece, or I hear you get nickeled and dimed because there's a dent on the machine or whatever. A lot of that is taken into consideration up front, going back to that point that we have almost 200 years of experience around equipment at Deere.
Exactly.
This is what we do. We can bake that in. We understand equipment gets used. It gets salt on it. Stuff happens out in the snow and the ice and in the dirt. So again, it's a smoother process and something that's not a fire drill. It's something we're doing every day. Our teams have the knowledge and awareness of. So just at the end, it should make it easier for your business to not feel some of that. Because again, that's leasing is probably the one folks know the least about. And I think it's also one that they hear the most horror stories about. I'm sure there's some examples out there, but at the end of the day, we try and get out in front of those with some specific things. We've got hour forgiveness programs. If you go over a little bit on hours, we're not going to stick you with a big bill. We've got some damage release programs on mowers as well. That, hey, again, we understand the mower's not going to look like it did when it left the dealership and the factory. Like, it's going to have some scratches. We can provide some wiggle room in there as well. So we try and make it easy for everybody to not make this a surprise at the end, and that's, I think, something that we like to point out as well.
Good point.
I'm just like a proud parent over here as Luke's going through the whole John Deere financial pitch. So that I don't know what I have left to say. But no, and one thing that we haven't hit on a whole lot, that it kind of ties into the cost of ownership, the maintenance, the upkeep. But one thing that when you're constantly leasing and you're rolling into new equipment, you're keeping that equipment under the warranty period as well. So anything that would go wrong is going to be covered under warranty. So that's another huge benefit to tying those kind of leasing windows to that 24, 36-month warranty, that you're constantly covered if anything goes wrong. Then you lean on that world-class John Deere dealer experience, that they're out there with warranty parts and they're keeping you up and running.
And Cameron, you make me, I think I told this story in Dallas. I had a very good friend that owned a pool building company and was debt averse. And I mean, you couldn't get him to pay cash for a backhoe, lease one, rent one. He just wanted to drive this old backhoe that was leaking hydraulic fluid everywhere. And he was putting $500 a month worth of hydraulic fluid in this machine. So imagine how many driveways were stained. Imagine the issue that the operator had with that machine. I'm not even sure that would be safe, to be honest with you. Uh, but he thought he was saving money. And I think equipment, when it's down, that's a drip. A lot of times that hits you a lot harder than you realize. Not to mention frustrating your employees and everything else. So, again, first and foremost, your number one consideration when picking a piece of equipment, which equipment is going to best serve me, my needs, and where is the dealer that if I need an issue, I'm going to have it. And in those two instances, John Deere shines bright. You're never going to have an issue with those other two. Are there other good equipment manufacturers and dealers? Yes, of course there are. But as far as knowing you've got a piece of equipment you can count on and having a dealer network, Deere's got some of the best. So then it becomes the math equation, like what are our numbers telling me? What makes the most sense financially? And that's where you can, I think, get ahead in the game of business.
Definitely, definitely agree. It's just good to open up the eyes here, and I think we've hit on some of this. I'll let Cameron talk about it. Just again, where we've got a lot of options from John Deere Finance, and just bringing awareness to a lot of those that maybe some of these, again, folks aren't as familiar with.
Yeah. So just kind of like Luke said, we talked about a lot of these. So our main financing options on equipment are going to be loans or leases. One of the questions that we got at Grow was around kind of lease terms, right? So we will do leases up to 72 months. The thing that's just going to change is hours of use and term are going to impact that purchase option at the end. So the longer the lease goes, the more hours are on it, the smaller that purchase option is going to get at the end, which increases your monthly payments. So that's just kind of how that lease option works. But Luke mentioned 0% options. There's a ton out there right now. We've had those pretty consistently over the last few years. So one of the big things that we're able to offer with the support of the overall John Deere enterprise, seasonal and skip payments. These are ones that don't get talked about a lot, but are huge when we're talking about cash flow and making things work for your business, right? We talked a lot about, we're in the solutions business, and we're here to kind of help you guys manage your business. Every business is a little bit differently. So the seasonal and skip pay options. So let's say you have an operation where you're really heavy mowing. You don't have as much snow. You're in the southern part of the United States. You don't have a lot of snow. You don't have as much cash coming in those times of year. So we can take your payment structure and we can say, okay, if you want to make higher payments when you have cash coming in and lower those payments in the months that you don't, we can absolutely set that up for you at the start of your installment or at the start of your lease. So, and then if you just have some months where you don't want to make payments at all, we can set up skip payments. We would just remove a couple payments from the amortization. You would tell us when you don't want to make those every year. And then let's say if 36-month note with 36 payments becomes a 36-month note with 27 payments. And then we just kind of move those around and structure those with with how it works for your business. So we also have the ability to bundle different pieces of equipment. So if you want to roll everything into one note and make one payment, so you want a skid steer and you want a zero turn all on one note, we can absolutely do that. And then we've got a ton of options for parts and service as well. So we've got our multi-use and revolving platforms that allow you, and Luke's got it up here. So like right now we have a turf terms operation. So we have no interest, no payments until November of 26. We've got so if you wanted to load up on, think about it, wear parts at the start of the year, right? And say, hey, I want to get my belts, I want to get my fluids, I want to get all that stuff, and I want to, and you can go ahead and load all that up now, make no payments, no interest until the end of the year. Talk to your dealer about what would it look like if, hey, I didn't use some of this stuff and I want to bring it back and I want to get a credit. Dealers are willing to have those kind of conversations as well. And so that's a huge driver of just, again, keeping that cash flow in your business, not having to make a huge outlay of cash for wear parts, or not worry about, hey, what happens if this piece of machinery has to go in for a service? I've got a financing solution that I can put this out there and I can make those payments work for me and my business.
It's fantastic.
Anything I missed there, Luke?
No, the only thing I was going to add there, I know Marty, you work with Site One a lot, and just to plug there that one of the powerful things too is John Deere Finance is integrated kind of behind the scenes with actually quite a few different supply companies on the agriculture side and landscaping side. So there's abilities to even integrate there and get some attractive terms under the John Deere financing arm with some select partners of ours that are suppliers of other kind of whether it's seed or like Site One landscape supplies. We've got that with a lot of companies too. That's pretty unique out in the industry.
Site One is an amazing company, and it makes me think of something that I did not mention in Dallas that I should have. One of the best things you can do is, if you're in procurement in your company for materials, is to call your local Site One rep and ask them if they can come meet with you and show you ways that they have found that you can be more profitable through their services, through their early order program, through working with their teams in the areas that they have expertise. It's the same thing here with John Deere, folks. You might meet, and Cameron and Luke, you're going to have to make it clear here at the end where someone can get a hold of you guys. But you have an opportunity here to learn from one of the 10 most iconic brands that has their own financing arm. They've done so well. And these are, and I know it may seem hard to believe. Maybe your business is a $10 million year business, or maybe you just went over $1 million. And you hear people say, well, it's just more zeros. It really is that. There are still things that a multi-billion-dollar corporation like John Deere does that you can do in your business. And even if you end up not working with John Deere right now, okay, there's something you can learn from this that can, excuse me, make you a better business person as you go along here. Cash is king. And when you dip into the ranks of what I'm trying to do in growing my business, you start to see where all those weaknesses are. And these are fulcrums, these are leverage points that you can move in your business to help you improve how smooth it can operate and not have so many dips and ebbs and flows of cash flow, which is really difficult because you want to be spending time talking with two people, your customers and your team. And if you're juggling a bunch of other stuff at the same time, there's just not enough hours in the day to do all that, folks. So what Cameron's mentioned here and Luke has, being able to skip some payments and working that where it smooths out, and then looking at some of this, there's just a wealth of options that you can use to make your business better.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really well there, Marty. And I think one thing I take from that and getting to know this industry over the years is there's already a lot of volatility and variability in this business, right? Did we get rain? Did we get snow? Things that you can't control.
So
So
true.
what we're trying to do is take one more thing out of that volatility and give you a little bit of stability in an area of your business that it's one less thing that you have to focus on.
Well said. Well said. And maybe just a final note before we can open up for questions too. And you're probably sick of hearing this, right? There isn't one that works for everybody. You talked about whatever size your company is. I know customers that we work with that just have a couple pieces of equipment and they've decided that leasing is good or cash is good. We have other customers, some of the biggest companies in the landscaping industry that are dead set on one way or the other. So you see it on both ends of the spectrum. There really isn't. I know everyone likes a clear cut. When I get to this point, I should go this route. There really isn't. And I think that's powerful though, because you can
Yeah.
really customize it, what fits your business. The companies at every end of the spectrum are doing similar things. And I think that's something that again just allows you to have control over it if you know your options. That's the key thing.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah.
Emily, do we have any questions? Are we ready for questions, Luke and Cameron?
I think
I believe
so.
so.
Great. I do have a question from Jeff. He asked, can you provide additional analysis about the cost of parts and repair over a 5-year period for buying versus leasing, maybe the benefits of each?
Let me share what I can tell you. So we have numerous loaders that we financed, and a couple of them are paid for. And then we have a whole bunch of them that were on leases with John Deere. We have a John Deere 524 that I believe is like a $280,000 loader. Now we only have one of those. That thing is on year 5. We haven't had to do much to it. Um, so I don't have a great deal of thing there, but I can tell you on that case, that one worked out for us buying it, and it's been a good investment. And I think the last time we checked on the trade-in value of the machine, I want to say it was still around $150,000. So, um, I even if you're using it for snow and using it for landscaping, and that loader that I'm talking to, that's the one that loads all of our trucks in the morning. It's the one that gets the most hours. I think that one is getting somewhere around 500 hours a year on it. So that would be what I would say. As far as the math goes, Cameron and Luke probably have, I'm guessing you have some studies on what you've seen with that and where the point is that you sell something or how that all works out. Do you have any? Can you answer that question from Jeff?
Yeah, I think I'm just thinking specifically about a mower. I can't remember if the mower was in the question or it was just in general. But if you think about a mower, whether you are leasing or taking out a loan for that, I mean, I think it's pretty standard. If you're putting good hours on it, a lot of times 3 years is really the
Yes.
max before things really start. It's time to think about getting a new one. For that 3 year period, you can keep the machine under the factory warranty during that period of time, and that saves you from any type of manufacturing defects, so to speak. So you're completely covered if something happens that is our fault or your equipment manufacturer's fault. That's going to get taken care of by the dealer. You will still have maintenance costs associated with that, whether you are leasing or putting it under an installment. But again, if you know you're keeping it over that 3 year period, you can factor that in to your, I know I'm doing this maintenance interval. We provide you with our factory maintenance intervals through our connectivity and our on our operator's manual, and tell you exactly what type of parts and service are needed during those intervals. So you could factor that into, if I just want to maintain my machines, here's what it's going to cost me for filters, fluids, blades, and so on. That gives you a good idea over that 3 year span, whether you're installing
Yes.
or leasing. And then after that, again with the mower, where you typically, it kind of reminds me of the backhoe story, Marty, from one of your colleagues there, that things can really start to break down more. You're out of warranty. You
Right.
might have done perfect maintenance, but your operators decided to do other things with the machine, and you're just having to deal with it more and more. So the cost of maintaining that machine after that period could at some point outweigh what you were paying for the
Well,
machine
and I
to
think the
own it.
other thing, yeah,
Yeah.
and I think the other thing that can happen there, Luke and Cameron, is you're growing your business. So what are you probably doing if you're outgrowing your business? You're out making sales and you're hustling and you're counting on other people that aren't as experienced with stuff as you are. So they're working on a mower every other week and you don't find out about it. And next thing you know, you've put $3,000 into a mower that's worth $1,000.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of little drips that can go on in a business when you're not watching this stuff. And for us in particular, with where we're at, and I could not do this when I started, okay, but I can now. What makes the most sense for us is to buy new. We do not have a mechanic. We rely on outside people to help us. At 18 million, we have outsiders like John Deere to help us. We can depreciate that machine. We know we've got a machine that's going to do what we need it to do in that warranty period, and we can keep moving and we can focus on the stuff that we know best, which is landscaping. And I think that there are just, when you start a business, you're scrapping and scraping and scrapping and clawing and fighting for everything to make it work. And when you get a little bit more maturity to you and you start to find other people to help you and other ways to help you, such as using other people's money to grow your business, you start to get better and you can pick up some points in profitability by using some of these techniques to your benefit.
Oh, well said, Marty. And I think Jeff, just to make sure I'm answering your question directly, so there wouldn't be any difference in the repair cost strictly due to your procurement of buying or leasing. Well, so you're still going to have the
I see.
responsibility for the maintenance while you have that.
Yep.
And then obviously there's going to be some variability depending on what type of machine that you have on what the actual cost and the repairs are going to be. Some dealers will also have the ability to have a maintenance package that you can agree to up front, and then we can absolutely roll that into the loan, so you can just pay for that alongside your equipment. That would be something that you would work out individually with your local dealer.
So I just got a question texted to me by one of our clients that's listening, instead of through the chat, and he said, "I just purchased all new equipment 2 years ago. I have 5 loaders we use for snow. I paid cash for most of it. I'm listening to you. I do need cash. I wonder if it would make any sense to trade this equipment in, get the cash for it, inject that into my business, and lease some new loaders. What do you think of that idea? On the surface, that sounds like a great idea to me. Cameron and Luke, what do you think of that idea?"
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely what we're talking about here, right? Of ways to think about your cash flow differently and without knowing anything else about their
Right.
business. I thought you were going to go a different route with that question of because we don't actually do just a straight refinance. It would have to be a part of a new transaction to go through John Deere Financial. But a trade in and then a new deal on a lease on new loaders is absolutely something that
I
we'll
mean,
do all day long.
I don't know if it would make sense to your point, Cameron. You'd have to see the rest of it, but on the surface, I would say that probably does make a lot of certainly makes sense to explore that.
Yeah, like I said, I think that's absolutely what we're talking about here today, and that's the right mindset to have of, hey, there's these tools out there. Maybe I need to take a look and see if this is the right choice for me.
Hey, listen, everybody would love to stroke their ego and say everything on their lot is paid for, right? But the fact of the matter of that, unless you're some, rich uncle's nephew, that's not going to happen. You got to figure out a way to be a big boy and make this all work on your own. So these are all great strategies to talk about.
We did get another question from Daniel, and Marty, you answered this a little bit, but I think it might be helpful if you gave a little more detail. Daniel asked, the company he works at has 2 people on staff to maintain and fix equipment. Do you have maintenance people on staff, or do you primarily send your issues to the dealer? Do you want to maybe outline exactly what that maintenance looks like for trucks and for your other equipment?
Yeah, so for us, Daniel, we have Zach who heads up our fleet and our facilities, and Marcos who is a service technician in the field and works on some of our very small equipment. Everything else gets worked on by outsiders. We have a mobile repair fleet that's a small business. It's a father and 4 of his sons. They each have a service truck and they service all of our trucks. They do a wonderful job. They're extremely responsive. They're great. We have a mobile medic guy that used to work at a dealership as a mechanic. He's super and does all of our. He sharpens our blades every Friday and puts them back in the rack. He does service on our mowers. The weed eaters, our 2 guys have been trained a fair amount from steel, so they can do a lot of the little things. But anything significant, we go to our dealer that we work with. And then the last thing we have are a reliable dealership in John Deere, which has been, I mean, I'm not sure if every John Deere representative is like Brittany. If they are, John Deere's got no competition because the woman just flat out hustles for us. Now, we are probably her biggest customer, so she probably needs to hustle, but I'm just saying they have been great. And again, Daniel, for us, I know through our peer groups that we have in the Grow Group, there's over 250 companies in our peer groups. We know that your number that you should be spending on your fleet and your equipment should be between 8 and 11%. Now, I know that's a big range, okay? But if you're doing your own mechanic work and you're at 13%, that's not working. You've got it. That is a indicator that something you have is amiss. You're either trying to keep old stuff running too long, you're doing stuff you shouldn't be, you're spending, there's something amiss there. So I would go and look, and if your number is between 8 and 11%, you're in good shape. Obviously, closer to 8 is better than closer to 11. Ours was 10% last year. We think we can get that down to 9.5, especially given the age of our fleet and that we're not doing a lot of repairs. It's most of our stuff is maintenance. But that's how we handle it. And maybe whatever holes I left, Luke and Cameron can fill in.
I don't think anything else to add on my seat. I know, yeah, you've been very open about your strategy regarding maintenance, and I think even in Dallas, we had a couple folks, maybe even at the end, say, "What
Yeah.
do you mean you don't have someone on staff that's doing that?" So it definitely seems to be something that folks are interested in learning more about. So that's always a good question because I think it does
And
bring up
it
some good
and Luke, it's
conversation.
somewhat controversial. I mean, mechanics are hard to find, first of all. The other thing is, and I'm sorry to any mechanic that's listening to us, but just like an accountant's main badge of honor is not making you pay tax, sometimes I would argue you should probably pay the tax, all right, and not go out and buy a new machine 2 weeks before January 1 because you don't want to pay tax when you don't really need the machine. That doesn't make any sense. The other thing is mechanics get their badge of honor by keeping stuff going. And they're not doing it maliciously, but they want to keep the 1984 International truck running because it's become a badge of honor. It's look what I did to keep this working. Well, okay, that's fun. And that truck might be a cool thing to put in the parade, but that's not what's best for the business. And the best businesses are run by people who have a heart, but also are emotionally detached from it. And if you are making decisions emotionally, you're going to lose. You've got to make decisions, financial decisions emotionally, you're going to lose. You got to make decisions on what's best overall for everyone involved, including the financial angle. So for us, it just doesn't make sense for us to have we would need three mechanics full time probably to keep on top of the stuff that we have, and even then, I think we would have a problem. And I don't want to buy a $10,000 transmission jack that we use once every other year and an engine lift and a bigger shop and a paint bay and everything else that you might need. Some companies can pull that off. I get it. We're not, that's equipment repair is not my, I just don't know anything about it. It's a totally different thing. And I just think it can be rather troublesome. You know, Walmart doesn't have garages that work on all their semis. They have third-party logistics that ship their stuff for a reason.
No, I think the only thing I'll add there is something we get a lot of, and a lot of folks are surprised on, is that whether it comes to maintenance, whether you've got a big shop that you have the capability to do that in, or you want to do it yourself or work with a third party, are what we call connectivity solutions. The John Deere Operations Center, you can
Awesome.
actually set up the equipment maintenance, track it if you want to do it yourself. It tells you exactly what to get. You can actually order parts direct on there that actually come through your dealer, and get the parts shipped to you immediately. You can do that. You can change, you know what, we're not doing this interval or we don't do it here. Or you can send it to the dealer, of course. They're capable of doing it. That's something we hark on a lot too. We even have solutions in the market now that if you've got a very advanced shop, you want to do things like reprogramming, you want to do things like understanding parts diagrams, we provide that capability. And again, it goes
Amazing.
back to it's a good, whether you like to do it yourself or send it off. That's something we talk a lot about, especially to landscapers that are really interested and surprised about that on the maintenance, on the repair side. So just a little plug for that, related to that topic of maintenance, because that does seem to be popular here with the questions.
Emily, I know we're going on an hour. Is there anything else?
We are, so I think you guys can go ahead and wrap it up if you have any final closing thoughts.
Cameron, Luke, any final words of wisdom, and I'll wrap it all up.
No, I think Obviously we just want to thank everybody for taking the time to spend with us here today and talk a little bit about things that could help your business. Luke and I think our contact information will be tied to the webinar somehow, that you'll be able to get a hold of us. Really
That
encourage
and
you to have.
that was my biggest question that I neglected to ask you two beforehand was, do we want the attendees or anyone watching this afterwards to reach out to each of you, or do you want them to reach out to their local dealer?
I was just gonna say that the probably the easiest path, and that's gonna get the most out of really talking about your business, is talking to your local dealer.
Yeah, that's
Any
what I
any
thought.
any high level stuff that you have about kind of the products in general, we can certainly help you with. But if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of how it's going to help your business, take some of that information to your local dealer and start having those conversations, because they have all the tools to be able to help you be successful.
And if I could expand upon that, tell them that you saw a webinar with Cameron Stoll and Luke Gribble from John Deere Corporate, and they were showing some innovative ways that we could finance equipment. Can I talk to you about how I might be able to grow with John Deere as a partner? I think if you ask that, and you may not end up doing something, I understand, but I think you're going to get smarter as a result, and you'll be glad you did.
Yeah. No, and I just add to that too. Thanks for attending. This is a fun one to talk about. I think every time we talk about it, Marty, with you, it keeps getting better and better. So
Yeah.
continue to be happy. And I also say too, Cameron and I, we're typically on the circuit, so to speak. So we're at all the big shows. We're obviously at Grow, Equip, some of the NALP shows. So if you come by our booth or see us there, come talk to us. We'd love to hear firsthand too. I'll throw that out there as well.
Well, and I told you this, so you know I'm not patronizing you. You guys, they have the best carpeting in their booth when you go to see them. I mean, I don't know what they spent on the stuff, and they may just throw that carpet out when they're done. You should probably hang around and take it. John Deere's a great company, Luke and Cameron. We're very, very proud to have you as a supporter of what we do in the Grow Group. And, our whole quest is to help the owners and leaders of landscaping companies grow their businesses. And I did graduate with a degree in business, but it didn't have a concentration in finance. I've learned a lot from both of you. I've learned a lot of commonsensical things from you, tricks that we can pass on. We've passed on some today. Hopefully, we've made a couple people a little bit smarter and maybe look at some ways to do things. And I'm just very grateful for the lessons we were able to share today. We're making an impact on the industry with your help, and I appreciate it.
You bet. Very good
Absolutely.
topic, and always enjoy it. So really thanks to everybody.
Thank you. Emily, just before I say goodbye to everyone, will they get the replay of this emailed to them?
Yes, sir. We will send
That's
out
what I
the
thought.
recording after this is done processing.
So, if I wanted to make a last suggestion, then I'll say goodbye. You could even send that to your local John Deere rep, and they may have a way of watching this on the John Deere network anyway. But again, I'm telling you, there's something here. Take some time to meet with your rep, look at your business. If you need something from me, by all means, reach out. Have a great Thursday. Keep growing your business. I know spring is upon us, 74 degrees Friday here in Dayton, Ohio. Can't believe it that it's going to be that warm, but that's what they say, followed by a low of 30 the following week. But I'll take the 74 for right now. So on behalf of the rest of my small but mighty team at the Grow Group, Emily, thanks for producing today. This is Marty Grunder with Luke Gribble and Cameron Stall saying so long, everyone.
See ya. Thank you.